Albert Sidney Johnston's story begins in Mason County, Kentucky, on February the 3rd, 1803, where he was born to Connecticut native Dr. John Johnston and Abigail Harris Johnston. Childhood friend J.S. Chambers writes of him in 1873 that as a boy, Albert was his ideal of a manly, handsome boy, active and energetic in athletic games, fond of hunting on Saturdays, and always did well in his classes, especially mathematics. He was educated at Transylvania University in Lexington, Kentucky, where he met fellow student Jefferson Davis. Both were appointed to the United States Military Academy at West Point, where Johnston graduated in 1826, eighth in a class of 41. He was assigned to the 2nd Infantry and served for a brief period during the Black Hawk War, and in 1829 he married Henrietta Preston. They had one son, William, who wrote an extensive biography of his father and would become a colonel in the Confederate Army. Johnston resigned his commission in 1834 to take care of Henrietta, who had tuberculosis, but she died in August of 1835. After his wife's death, Johnston was a farmer for a short time near St. Louis, but in August of 1836 he moved to Texas and joined the Texas Patriots, devoting himself to the service of the state. He quickly became noticed and was admired for his feats of daring and horsemanship. He entered the ranks as a private, but rapidly rose through the grades to become the adjutant general. On January the 31st, 1837, he became the senior brigadier general in command of the entire Texas Army. He wasn't allowed to take office, though, until after he'd encountered his competitor. General Felix Houston, who was being reduced in rank and relieved of command, challenged Johnston to a duel. On February the 5th, 1837, near Live Oak Tree just west of the Lavaca River, Houston and Johnston dueled using Houston's horse pistols. Houston's ear was grazed, and after 6 volleys, Johnston was felled with a shot to his hip. No bones were broken, but his sciatic nerve was damaged, which left his leg numb for the rest of his life. In 1843, Johnston married Eliza Griffin and became a planter in Brazoria County. But when the Mexican War broke out, he joined the Army under General Zachary Taylor. He was later appointed by President Taylor as paymaster in 1849 and traveled the Indian frontier in Texas. In 1855, President Franklin Pierce appointed Johnston colonel of the newly formed U.S. 2nd Cavalry, stationed here at Fort Mason, Texas. His lieutenant colonel was a Virginian named Robert E. Lee, and his majors were future Confederate General William Hardee and Union General George Thomas, the Rock of Chickamauga. His other subordinates included Earl Van Dorn, Edmund Kirby Smith, and the venerable John Bill Hood. He remained in command of his regiment and the Department of Texas until ordered in 1857 to command an expedition to restore order among the Mormons in Utah, who were in revolt against the national government. Colonel Johnston was promoted to brigadier general and was retained in the command of Utah until February of 1860. At the onset of the Civil War, Johnston served as the commander of the U.S. Army Department of the Pacific in California. Though initially opposed to secession, like many Southern-born officers, he resigned his post upon hearing the Southern states' decision to secede. On September the 10th, 1861, Johnston was appointed the commanding general of the Western Department for the Confederate States, overseeing all of the territories west of the Allegheny Mountains, excluding the coastal regions. Notably, this made Johnston the only general officer to serve in the armies of the Republic of Texas, the United States, and the Confederate States of America. After the defeats of Fort Henry and Fort Donelson, Johnston concentrated his forces in the strategic crossroads town of Corinth, Mississippi. On March the 29th, 1862, he assumed command of the combined Confederate forces of the newly formed Army of the Mississippi. Just 4 days later, on April the 2nd, 1862, based on the intelligence that Union General Don Carlos Buell's reinforcements from Nashville had not yet reached General Grant, currently bivouacked at Pittsburgh Landing, Johnston decided to attack and began his march 22 miles from Corinth to Pittsburgh Landing. Heavy rains and bad roads delayed the march, and his troops were not in position until the afternoon of the 5th of April. In an informal council of war, General P.G.T. Beauregard strenuously protested the attack. General Johnston listened and is said to have replied,
"Gentlemen, we attack at daylight. I would fight them if they were a million."
At daybreak on Sunday, April 6, 1862, 3 corps of Confederate infantry commanded by Generals Braxton Bragg, Leonidas Polk, and William Hardee stormed out of the woods near Pittsburgh Landing, and the bloodiest battle in American history up to that time was underway. At about 2:30, while leading a charge against the Union camp, Johnston was wounded, taking a bullet behind his right knee, severing an artery. Possibly due to the numbness brought on by his dueling injury, he didn't realize the extent of his injury. His boot filled with blood, and he died of blood loss right here within an hour. Albert Sidney Johnston was originally buried here at the Metairie Cemetery in New Orleans. However, in 1867, the Texas legislature passed a resolution to have his remains moved to the Texas State Cemetery in Austin. Today, a monument honoring General Johnston stands atop the Army of the Tennessee tumulus here in Metairie Cemetery. In 1901, the state legislature appropriated $10,000 for a memorial to General Johnston, and Governor Sayers gave the commission to Elizabeth Ney, a German sculptor who'd also done statues of Sam Houston and Stephen F. Austin. She began work by creating a bust of Johnston and a plaster model of the memorial. It shows General Johnston in full dress uniform lying on a stretcher, his left arm over his body and his right holding the Confederate battle flag draped over his lower body. Ney designed the statue's enclosure with open ironwork bars and railings so the tomb and statue would be visible from all sides without visitors having to enter the mausoleum. She included Gothic elements such as pinnacles on the roofline, tracery on the gables, and Crockett capitals on the corner columns to give the site a solemn and religious quality. Ney also incorporated the Texas Lone Stars into the Gothic tracery to mark Johnston's grave as a commemoration to a notable Texan. Hi, this is Johnny Anderson, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Texas Generals. If you did, be sure and give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel so you won't miss out on more captivating stories of our Texas heroes. Thanks for watching.